Welcome back to episode 13 of the Men Without Mask podcast. And today we have another special guest. We have Eoin Cremin from Eoin Cremin Fitness. He is another coach who is just leading in the industry. I've known Eoin a couple of years now. We've had a lot of chats over the years, a lot of ideas shared, a lot of advice given, and a lot of lessons learned, especially from my side, that is for sure. So, Eoin, rather than the usual, who are you? Who have you had to become to build the life you have now, the life you're living, and ultimately the life that you want to keep building?
Great first question, Lee, and thanks for having me on the podcast. Delighted to be here. Who have I had to become? I suppose I had to become a calmer, less reactive version of myself if I'm to reflect back on who I was a few years back. A lot of my behaviour was quite reactive, and it was reactive on based on external things going on outside of my control. So when I say reactive, I don't mean that I would snap at people or anything. It was more just that I would I was always waiting for something to happen and respond to it, rather than having kind of my own structure or plan. And whether that be with business, my personal life, my health and fitness, a lot of that was just kind of I was going into each day without kind of a clear idea of what I was doing, and I could see that it was just becoming more chaotic and stressful. I was always quite good in terms of managing my nutrition and when I train or whatever, but a lot of my energy, my emotional energy, was just being wasted on reacting to everything and trying to maybe people please a little bit, getting back to people as soon as I could. Like if a client would text me at say midnight, I would get back to them immediately, rather than saying this is my time, it's midnight, I'll get back to them in the morning. And again, that would have an impact on say my relationships. It would have an impact on me because I'm not switched off and then I'm not fresh the next day. And that was just a very small part of it. So I had to work on being a calmer, less reactive version of myself, and that stemmed out into many other areas. And I think just bring in that state of calm where I said, okay, I'm going to leave the phone off for 3 hours now, and I can do that. And then I'm going to take some time for myself, or spend some time with my wife, or whatever it might be. And switching off more allowed me then to be a much fresher, better version of myself, whether that be showing up for my clients, showing up for my family, showing up for myself, whatever my decision making around my nutrition, my training, my general exercise. And it all started with kind of just, I suppose, reflecting and looking at myself and saying, you need to just take it down a notch, be less reactive and be calmer. And what that's done for me then has been life changing in terms of it allowed me to grow my business, allowed me to enjoy my training more and just be a better version of myself, as I said.
Yeah. And I think it's funny you say it, because that's you cooked the words out of me. That's exactly what I worked on for years. And I would have been a lot more kind of aggressive in my reactions. I'd snap. I would never be anything physical, but I would whine and I get thick. And yourself, you just start talking and you're saying stuff and you're after, and it's like, I shouldn't have said that. There was no need. Then you're gone into damage control. You know what I mean? So no, I can appreciate that. But where do you reckon it came from? Where did this need to be so available to kind of to people please, as you put it? Where do you reckon that came from?
I put it back to really early in my career. So I started working in the fitness industry in 2012, and I feel working in a gym, it's a fast-paced environment. So the first gym I worked in was a leisure centre gym, but I would have been teaching a lot of classes and doing PT, and it was very much a case of the client's here, go straight away. Client is here, or the class is starting, you got to go, or whatever. And it might be a case of you're gone from standing up by the lifeguard chair watching the pool to, class is starting, upstairs straight away, teach your class. Oh, that's over, get back down, cover the desk, someone's taking their break. And it was just kind of fast-paced, no time to kind of think. And then it was the same when I went to my next job in the States. I was working in New York in a gym in Queens, and that was great. But again, it was very fast-paced. Every half hour, a new client comes in. So I reckon it kind of stemmed from there, getting to the client as fast as you could, kind of a thing, right? When I came back to Ireland, it was the same thing. It was you have to be ready to give a client a good answer. Maybe coaches that I worked with over the years, and this is going back now maybe 7 or 8 years ago, who were great coaches, but if I asked a question, they'd respond to me straight away. So in my head, then I thought, well, these are good coaches, this is how they do it, so I need to respond to people quickly as well, regardless of the time. And I remember even PTing some of these clients that also worked with maybe the coach that I was working with, And they would always say, "Oh, he's so good. He'd get back to me even at like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning." And I was thinking, like, in my head, well, he has kids. How's he doing that? Is that normal? But then because I was working under him and I looked up to him, maybe there was a little bit of okay, that's how I should structure my business when one day I get to this place. And I think that's maybe what I created for myself. I started putting up maybe advertisements for 24/7 accountability on the WhatsApp access that we give people, which again was just burning me out. So I think it stemmed from a few different areas from my career early on, where I felt the best way to help people was give them a quick answer rather than having time and giving them the good answer, even if it's not as immediate. And I think I maybe created that story in my head, and maybe that's where it started from. And that reactive behaviour just kind of kept going, and from a place maybe then of like desperation. If I don't do it, what will the outcome be? Will people not
lose clients? And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Will clients get fed up because I didn't give them a reply within 20 seconds of their WhatsApp? And these kind of silly questions when you say them out loud now in your head, but at the time you think, oh, like they might have been in a program before where they got an immediate answer. They should expect that of me. Whereas all it took was for me to say, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But I always like to get back with a really good quality answer now and put myself in the client's shoes. Here's what I can, here's what we should do. Here's the strategy that you need to follow to solve this problem. Rather than saying, oh yeah, I'll get back to you as quick as I can. And next thing, there's problem still isn't solved,
Yeah, that's crazy how you can fall into those traps as well, because it starts off in a position of relatively positive, but you can't sustain it, because I would have had the same issue as well. And what happens then is you start losing the love for it all. It's like, well, what's the point of all this? Why do we do it? To have more fulfillment, help more people, and to make yourself miserable. You know what I mean? And what was the big shift for you? And like, what was the point that it was like, right? Or was there even a point that this was enough, or was it more of a gradual kind of transition out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose when I used to run a gym in town in Cork, and I finished in like when I was coming towards the end of my time managing that gym, I started to funnel more people from. I was doing a bit of PT in the morning, funneling them into my online. I had my online base, and I was trying to build that up to eventually leave the job as the gym manager, leave the job as the PT, and go straight into online. So, there was a lot of work going into that, and I would do a lot of my online coaching in the evenings after running the gym all day. And you're getting your updates back to clients, then they would text you again. There'd be a bit of back and forth, so that could lead into the evenings. But it came to a point where my wife, at the time my girlfriend, she said to me, the only time I see you smile is Friday evening. And that hit home, and I'll never forget that, because I knew straight away when she said it, she was 100% right. It was my 2 days off from the gym and PT, so it was my bit of downtime. Even though I had a little bit of online work I would do at the weekend, burning myself out. And she says, the only time I see you smile is on a Friday evening. And I was like, that's really, really not right. So I knew then I had to change something. And at the time I was starting to think about, finishing up as the manager of the gym. Then I was like, I really want to be all in with my coaching. I'm very passionate about helping people. Managing the gym was fantastic. I loved it, 3.5 years of it. But it became more about like checking with the toilets clean, was the treadmills dusted down, all this, you're making your rosters, all these other factors. And it was a 6-story gym, so there was a lot to it. It took a lot of emotional energy, so I felt that I wasn't able to give my most to my clients then either. So when she said that, then there was another few things I started to notice, like, because I'd be on the phone late, started, like you said, kind of started to resent it a little bit. I was like, where's the joy in any of this? Where's the enjoyment? Where's the downtime? Where's the satisfaction with this? If I do leave the gym, I need to make this, more sustainable and not as taxing on the mind, where I feel like I'm a hostage to my phone, like 24/7. So when I did eventually leave, then I did look at it from a point of view. Okay, this is everything now. I have no salary from the gym. I have no PT money. It's just online. So there was more pressure, and I ignored the downtime thing that I was thinking of, and I continued to text people, late into the night, reply to clients as soon as I could. That kind of, I suppose, incorrect behaviour. And again, my wife, I'll always praise her. She did say to me, she's like, this is our downtime. Like, I think it was around Christmas. I think we were watching a Christmas movie. We had the roses in front of us. We had the celebrations were open. Pringles were there. The fire lighting. It was lovely. And I was on my phone. And she said, like, what's going on? Like, is this really what you want for the rest of your life? And even at the time, I think I rejected it. I was like, no, just a quick message, it'll be fine. I was like putting it down. And then eventually I sat down with a friend one day. She's also a coach. And I said to her, and she's like, yeah, you need to stop that. You need to cut it out, and you need to start get some clear boundaries. And when she said the word boundaries, I'm like, that's exactly what I thought myself. You got to have some boundaries because the rest of your life will suffer. And I stopped, and I made some clear cut-off times. I remember putting out a message. I was kind of nervous. Put a message out to all my clients. Guys, look, here are my new office hours. Monday to Saturday. Here's your opening times. Here's your closing times. If you contact me outside of those times, it'll be the next day by the time I get back to you. And Sundays, I'm totally off. And I was wondering would I get a backlash from it. Not one person said a thing, of course. But that was the turning point for me in terms of that. And then, that was the start of feeling calmer, not feeling like a hostage to the phone, working within your work hours, and then downtime outside of that.
Yeah, I think you need it. I think you need it because it's crazy. Like I have these similar chats with parents who, same thing, don't want to take time away from the kids in their case to prioritize themselves, thinking that that's just not what a good parent would do. But similar to yourself, the time gets taken back. It allows them to then be more present. It allows them to be more impactful with the clients, but it allowed you to just be a better coach. And the crazy thing is as well, because I did the exact same not so long ago, and now it's at a point where everyone, first thing that we'll talk about is, well, look, this is the whole process. These are your contact hours. By all means, drop your messages in, and I will get back to you as soon as reasonably possible. If it's outside those hours, it may be the next day. If I happen to be still working, you might get a response, but this is the window. And same as yourself, Sundays off, and it's a game changer. Because you need that peace. And especially, truthfully, there's rarely a need for an instant answer to a problem. I often find as well, and maybe this is just me, that there was less actual ownership and accountability of people learning and figuring stuff out themselves, which I think everyone should to a degree, when they're able to get that answer straight away. It's like, right, well, here's a problem, rather than actually getting proactive and thinking for a couple of minutes. Let's just text Owen, let's just text Lee. They'll tell me what to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's the big thing that we do. We teach people to think for themselves, and by maybe being that instant response that people probably don't even need, you're not really helping them. You're just thinking for them. And that's probably a very good point I think you've made there. Like that, allowing people that little bit of time to respond themselves rather than just expect the coach to tell them exactly what to do all of the time. Now, of course, that is what we're there for. We're there for the advice and guidance. But sometimes having that little bit of time for themselves where they have to reflect and they have to think of what should I do next can be very beneficial to a client. So I think, it's not just you, the coach that wins out of it. Sometimes the clients can as well by nearly having to think for themselves.
Massively. And one thing that I like to kind of, it's rare I would tell someone straight away what the answer is. Like, what do you think we should do here? What do you think is a reasonable option? And it just gets them thinking. 9 times out of 10, I find a lot of it is just lack of confidence in their own decision making. They want that confirmation. And obviously, again, that's what we're there for. But it's the difference between being told to do something and learning why, to be able to better equip for when that pops up again, inevitably. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love asking clients questions rather than telling them you have to do this, because often that doesn't last. As you just said there, what do you think we should do and why is a great way of phrasing it. And again, even if the client gets it wrong and they suggest something that's incorrect, we're not going to be there saying, incorrect, make them feel silly. That was never going to be the option. It was always going to be okay, understand where you're coming from, but here's maybe a better option, or else just say, that's exactly what I was going to suggest, which is a great confidence builder for the client to think that way. So it's a win-win to ask the client the question rather than tell them what to do, which is, I think a big part of coaching, because you're just instilling their own confidence in their decision making. Then when they start to get things right, or even if they get it wrong, at least they understand the why then from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would much rather always see someone try something, even if it goes wrong. There's no wrong, there's no failure. They're all just lessons. You reflect, you learn, you move on, you do better next time. That's how I approach every single scenario with clients. I said there's one guy who was going off on holidays and he was worried about how to handle it. And I said, well, look, what is the ideal outcome here? Well, how do you want it to look first and foremost? Do you want to have some level of accountability, or do you want to just go and shoot it with it all? Because realistically, there's no point thinking it has to be one way or the other if it's not actually what you want. You know what I mean? So figure out what you want first, reverse engineer it, and then you reflect and you learn. Like I'm massive on trial and error with my clients as well. I said you can try future problem solve every problem under the sun. There's still going to be more issues. So just go see what happens. Maybe it'll work well, maybe it won't work so well, but guaranteed the next time you face it, you've proof, you've experience, and now you know how to better respond, maybe how to better react, and it just gives them, like you said, it gives them that kind of that ownership of it as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. The ownership is the big thing. The responsibility always falls on the client. And we can't call to their house and cook their food for them and put it into their mouth. That's just not what we do. Be pretty weird if it was, but like the ownership always comes back to them. But at the other side of it, I'm just after doing a few check-ins there with a few clients who are 6 or 7 weeks into coaching, and like the ownership is on them, but the responsibility aligns with them also getting the results because all the work is coming from them. And they'll say, a lot of them are very appreciative of the work that I'm doing to help them, but I always go back and say, well, you're doing this. I'm just giving you the tools, the structure and the pathway. You're following it and you're actually putting in the work day to day, week to week. And you're not being reactive, you're being very calm in your decision making, and you're understanding the how, the what and the why of this journey. So again, it does come back to them making those decisions and taking ownership. Sometimes it might take a while for them to take that responsibility on, because we know that a lot of people are very busy, and they might already be at almost full capacity in terms of what they can take into their lives. So taking in something new like coaching, sometimes there can be a bit of resistance to that. And I find some clients can turn out to be absolutely fantastic, but their first 2-3 weeks can be quite poor, just because there's so much new structure and behaviours that they may have to change. Now obviously we don't overload clients too much in the first few weeks, but it can take a few weeks for clients to get up to speed, and I think it's important to allow for that as well, because sometimes they come into a program and they think they have to hit the ground running every single time, and as long as they don't just say, well, it didn't work in the first week or two, so I'm going to stop, they'll always find a way to make it work, provided they're open-minded, which is the kind of clients that we want to work with, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's funny you mention it, because that's exactly what I say to clients on the onboarding call. I say, look, like for the next week or two, you're probably going to feel quite overwhelmed, and it's because you've got probably 200% more things to think about than you have had over the last number of months or days, however it is. So just embrace it. Just accept that it's not going to be permanent. Accept the first couple of weeks might feel a bit trickier. Like usually by week 3, with me, everyone, similar to yourself, everyone is kind of just ticking all their boxes. Now, it's not perfect, but it's starting to become more autonomous. And it's from there, it's a great position to be, because like really for the first little while, all that's required is effort. Effort will get you to a certain point, and even alongside the effort will get you most of the way. So it's just keeping that barrier to entry low, because like you said, with someone who's busy, and maybe they want to just get in shape, maybe they want to improve their health markers, body fat, whatever it is, they don't need to go crazy. Like even small things, baby steps, build your foundations, and as everything does, you get used to it, and then it becomes just not busy. You know what I mean? I think alongside that as well, though, Owen, a lot of it also truly comes down to understanding the person in front of you, what they actually have on their plate, and also being able to kind of dive in and read between the lines and see, right, is this actually genuine, or is it, like you said, is it a bit more resistance, is it a bit more fear, is it stubbornness, or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of different reasons it could be. And I also think as well, you have to kind of meet them where they're at to a degree as well. Like I think as coaches, we always need to be setting the pace, for sure. We always need to be a couple of steps ahead, so we are keeping things moving. But I remember my very first coach, and like I went in, I'd never worked with a coach before, didn't really have much knowledge about a lot of different things. And straight away there was massively complicated programs, all these different periodizations, rep schemes, different training techniques. I remember the first session I was 3 hours in the gym. I sent him a message, and look, man, I just want to check, like, am I doing something wrong or right here? Like, I'm after being in the gym for 3 hours and like I've been pushing, didn't get a reply for about a week. He was moving house and he took me on and said, yeah, the rise will be a small bit slower. So I literally lasted 2 weeks, and I said, I just haven't heard from you. Checking now. I'm after not wasting time, but I'm after spending so much time doing the work that you could have easily just dropped me a message and said, oh no, you're actually doing this or that wrong. You know what I mean? Same with nutrition. It's fucking crazy diet. And I was like, I don't want to cook this much. That's one thing I said is I wanted convenient. I don't like cooking. I don't want to spend time cooking, so just keep it easy. You know what I mean? And I think that's where a lot of people will go wrong, because it took me ages to go towards the coach after that.
Yeah, I think it's like, what probably happened there was he probably gave you a copy and paste of his training and his nutrition and expected you to reach his standards from, maybe where you were at. And I think the key thing you said there was, start from people where they are. Like I had a guy starting out just this week, and he wasn't joining the gym, but he had loads to work on. Hydration was very low, sleep was quite poor. His habits outside of that, like walking, wasn't great. Wasn't joining the gym. Had very little kind of structure with his nutrition. So if we tried to address all those habits in one go, we even agreed upon it on the consultation call. It would have been way too much. So I said, look, don't even think about the gym for right now. And he even suggested he could train at home. He has some weights at home. I said, don't bother. So we'll get you into the gym on week 4. Your first 3 weeks are just about getting the foundations laid. So he works quite a stressful job. So I said, to begin, I'm going to put you on a nutrition plan, take away that stress. But I want you to tell me exactly what you'd like your nutrition plan to be like.
Yeah.
Work on the dosage, and I'm going to keep it nice and flexible for you. We made a nutrition plan of very much the same kind of foods he eats, just keeping him away from snacks, a bit more protein, a bit more fibre, so that he's more satisfied and less likely to go away and maybe binge or just pick mindlessly. So nutrition was a big one, and then a very simple, achievable step target. All right, and that was all we really looked at. Bit more increase in on the hydration, so we have a plan of maybe increasing water intake by half a litre each week for the next 5 weeks. So he's not drinking a whole lot of water. There's no point in me telling him go from 1 litre to 4 litres, right? It's just not going to happen. The body's not going to respond well to that. So very simple things. They were the 3 basic things. Stick to the nutrition plan for the first few weeks, get out for a few walks, and increase the water intake slightly week by week. And that's all we're working on. If I went away and said, right, here's your 4-day training plan, I want you to hit 12,000 steps a day, we're going to stick to this nutrition plan for 3 days, then we're going to use my fitness pal for 4 days, I want you to start bringing in this mobility on your rest days, and like, it would just be so overwhelming for him, which we do for clients. This guy has worked with a coach before, but in a very small capacity. So what I just did in the consultation was, I put myself in his shoes. How overwhelmed would he be if I gave him too much? So let's give him very little, see how he responds to that, and then build on it slowly. Now people might think, hold on, I'm signing up with a coach and they haven't given me a training plan. Well, yeah, that's fair enough, but this guy wasn't training to begin with, and he had so much work to do. If his habits were in a great place, then we could throw the training in straight away. But we didn't want to do that, so we will bring it in after 3 weeks. And he is absolutely delighted with it, because he's like, this is actually quite manageable, where I don't feel overwhelmed. And like you just said there, Lee, I think it's so important to go back to that. Starting and meeting a client exactly where they are. And don't treat him like a client who's far more advanced than what he is, because what would have happened was, by week 3, he would have been gone. He would have said, this is too much, too stressed, I already have a lot going on with work, and he'd have been out the door. And that's no good to him or to me. So, I think meeting people where they are is such a big message, and I wish more people would just listen to this podcast and realise not every coach is there to intimidate you and scare you away with the most complex stuff. A lot of us are actually understanding people who do want to help.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think a lot of it as well, like, it all depends on the level of goal you want. Like, the vast majority of people just want to look a bit better. They want to feel a bit better. They want to have a healthier lifestyle. So they don't need the same level of, I'm going to say, strictness or rigidity that an athlete might need, that a bodybuilder might need, that someone who has even a photo shoot prep, someone might need. And I think personally that's where a lot of coaches miss the mark. If you're looking at someone like that guy you had, like you said, you give him a full bodybuilding prep and plan, it's like, right, well, he's going to just fucking burn out. Like, most people just need to look a bit better, feel a bit better. And how do you do it? Like, I always kind of take a similar approach to you. I'll try kind of get the physiology moving a bit better initially. So sleep, stress, energy, all the biofeedback. And my kind of stance on that is, if we obviously know we need to get people doing into the gym, we want to get them doing all these different things, but it's a lot easier to ask someone to put their head through a wall when they're feeling invincible and when they're probably feeling like absolute shit from on day one. Yeah. And I say that to clients on every call. I said, look, We're going to keep it easy. We're going to keep it simple. We're not looking for perfection. This is what we're hoping to achieve over the next couple of weeks. And then once we get to a point where you're fairly efficient, we'll start building things up. And that's where all of a sudden we can start putting the hammer down from a training perspective. We can start tightening things up if that is so desired, or we can start loosening things up if that's also a potential kind of requirement. And I think it's massive. It makes such a difference from a client perspective as well, because again, like if me or you went to a coach, we probably would want something that bit more intense, that bit more, but then we're working towards different goals. You know what I mean? I think that's also key. And I've had a chat with plenty of clients as well, because a lot of people, you know yourself, people come in and say they want to look like X, Y, or Z. And it's like, well, look, do you truly want that? And there's like, oh, I do. It's like, but you know what it takes to get there? Then you have that chat and it was like, oh, well, actually, no, I don't know if I do. I don't know if I want to sacrifice meals out, meals off plan. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think that's a big one as well. I think it's also something where coaches can fall down, where we can fall down, is not actually being honest with the client and the expectation of the result.
Yeah. I think that the key thing is being honest in the call up front like that. Like, you know, if you want to go to a place where you're unbelievably lean, you got that 6-pack, great, absolutely brilliant. Like it can be done, but there's a lot of sacrifice that comes with that. And then, you know, if you're looking at like your health in general, like your overall health, part of that is your social health, your relationships. Do you want to tell your mother and father that you can't go for a meal with them on Sunday because you're cutting? Do you want to say to your partner that you can't get a takeaway because you're cutting? And how often are you going to do that every week? Are you going to not go for a coffee and a pastry on a Saturday morning because you're cutting? Are you willing to say no to all of those things? I call it vitamin N, the power to say no. We all need a bit of it, because if you say yes to everything, you have no boundaries, and then you're going to be left frustrated. You won't get any results with your nutrition or your training. But if you are constantly saying no to everything, which you may have to do to achieve certain results, if we're talking about like a photo shoot or getting in ridiculously lean shape, there has to be a lot of structure and a lot of strictness, and that isn't really, you know, something that a lot of people would be willing to sacrifice. And I think
for
a lot of that
sure.
goes back to social media as well. I see a lot of it myself nowadays, where coaches in particular who are trying to like offer this flexible style of coaching, where they don't put up any of their nutritious meals, and they only put up the junk food. And I can have donuts for breakfast. Oh, I can have a pastry there for lunch. I can have a pizza for dinner. And like they only put that up. And again, it's good to promote it, but then people get this misconception that, well, he's in great shape or she's in great shape, so if they're able to eat all those things, then so can I, and I can still look like them. And then this really like grey area is in their mind, where they're so confused that they don't know why they just don't get in the shape that they want to be in, despite nearly copying this template that the coach they look up to online has. And I think be mindful of that you know, they could be unbelievably active, these coaches that are putting up how flexible they are with their food and how much calories they're consuming. They could be doing, you know, half a kilometre runs, and a half a marathon run a week, and they could be doing, you know, extra cardio on the side. They could be really starving themselves those days. They could be, reducing their calories massively to factor in those foods that they're putting on their story without disclosing that. So, like, look, again, I think it's a message for people. There is a lot of strictness and structure needed to get really lean, and it's not the be all and end all either. Having been there ourselves, it's great, but maybe, you know, it's not going to be something that you can maybe sustain long term.
No, and I think that's the key, because like I say that to anyone. I have a couple of guys that are working towards that, just a couple of bodybuilders and then athletes as well. Like I have a couple of people playing football, a couple playing rugby, and I'll be honest with them, like you don't have any room to maneuver much. You can have maybe your off plan meal each week. Outside of that, you've such a short time window to get shit done between off season and in season. Like if you're just constantly hitting 70%, which isn't a bad place to be, if for someone who just wants to look good and feel a bit better. But if you have different goals, your goals are always going to dictate your efforts. And I think a lot of it then as well is just understanding the reality of what it takes. And it's not to discourage anyone, but it's more so to shine a light on saying, like, you're looking at these people, what you haven't seen likelihood is 5 to 10 plus years of work and probably not doing all the things they're promoting now. Different, like if you've been training 10 years, you've got a lot of muscle, you've got a fairly active lifestyle, you probably can have some of those things every single day if you truly wanted. But it's rare, because if you look at the people who are truly leading the way from a physique perspective, they're not doing any of that shit. You know what I mean? That's the other side. So it's almost that kind of that false pretense in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like the messaging. It can confuse people, but you're right. Like the experience of lifting. If someone's only lifting a year, they're gonna have a lot less muscle mass than someone who's been lifting 10 years.
Yeah.
And they won't be able to get away with someone who's got 10 years lifting experience, well, because they won't have the same level of muscle mass. I coached a girl for a photo shoot a few years ago, and huge levels of muscle mass. She was lifting for 6 or 7 years, and I mean like really, really strong, but lot of muscle mass. So even the week of her photo shoot, she was on 2,400 calories, and like she was shredded. So, you put most people into a photo shoot, even if they got 3 or 4 years of experience, their calories could be far less than that. It could be 1,000 less than that, depending on their experience, their gender, their activity levels, etc. It's all individualized, and it's all dependent on a lot of what the person has done prior to the state that they're in now. But muscle mass contributes to a lot of it, and again, the intensity of training is another big thing as well. Someone lifting weights with a year's worth of experience probably isn't going to be able to push as hard as someone who's been training for 7 or 8 years. Therefore, their training intensity isn't going to be as high. Their muscle mass isn't going to be as high, so their metabolism is probably going to be slower, and therefore they can't maybe get away with, if you had a set of twins but one was lifting for 7 or 8 years more than the other, the more experienced lifter is going to be able to get away with a bit more. And I think some people look at that as unfair. It's not really. It's just a result of the actions that they've taken for longer. And I think it's just be mindful of that. Don't be comparing yourself to others online based on what they can do, because that's down to their circumstances.
Yeah, and that is a tough one, because I think you probably had those chats with clients as well. They come after seeing someone on social media, and something I always do is I actually ask people to send me a picture of what they want to look like, because everyone is always modelling off someone. Yeah. And then you can well, look, to look like that, this is ultimately what it takes. And it's like, then it's like, yeah, I want it, perfect, let's go. But ultimately then it could be a case of, actually, no, I'm not sure if I want to go to that level. And it's just, again, there's nothing right or wrong with it, but I think it's just understanding what is required to get to that goal. And also, as well as that, if you're comparing yourself against someone who's been working their ass off for 10 plus years, why would you expect to be able to get the same level of result in a fraction of the time?
Yeah, it's very, very
and
true.
I've had that chat with plenty of clients, and it doesn't, and it all depends. Sometimes it can go down well, sometimes it can't, but like, it's like everything. It's like fucking cheat codes and shortcuts. Everyone wants the results in half the time, but reality is, to get anywhere in business and physique, 10 plus years of just constant perseverance, patience, and not giving up. Then you'll have everything you want for the most part. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. It takes time, but again, I think it's very. Yeah. You're just being honest. You're just being honest with someone from the very beginning, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, I think it just makes for a much smoother transition, because then when you hit roadblocks or shit goes sideways, well, look, this is, we know what's happening. You know what I mean? And I think it sets up for a better overall coaching experience too, because it's all well and good taking someone on board, promising you're going to get them photo shoot lean or stage lean, but never having explained what it's going to take to get there. And all of a sudden they're not tracking, they're off plan the whole time. But then you're the one who's going to be under fire because, well, you promised you could do this in the first place.
Yeah, your reputation on the line as a coach, for sure. But I think if you're honest with them from the beginning, both the client and the coach have a picture in their head and they know exactly what we're aiming for. If you've no target, you're not going in any direction, I always like to say. If you've no goal, you've no target, you've no path. If I said to you, I want you to go up the country, what does that mean? Whereas if I said, if I want you to go to Belfast, I'll meet you there, you know exactly where you're heading for. It's the exact same with our coaching. If you say, someone signs up with you and they say, I want to get lean, how lean? How lean do you want to get? How much body fat are you willing to drop? How much?
What does lean look like to you?
Yeah. Again, it's going to look different to everybody. It's like I suppose it's probably more with female clients that we get it is like, I want to tone up. It means nothing. It's such a vague description that you have to be a lot more specific than that. and be willing to understand what's needed to get to that level as well. So, look, yeah, I think it's just about being clear on both sides, from the client and from the coach from the beginning, and then being very clear from our perspective as coaches of here's what that sacrifice will look like. You cannot go out in the piss every weekend if you want to get six pack shredded. Sorry, if you want to, maybe you can get away with it once a month. That's okay. Yeah. You can factor that in. But I think there's a little bit too much of the, like, I love helping people with flexible dieting. I absolutely love getting people from a place of like feeling that they need to be on a nutrition plan all the time to get results, to being able to step away from that. I have a girl on this morning. She's been on a nutrition plan. We've peeled her away from 3 days of flexible dieting and 4 days out of the plan. Now we're going the other way. It's 4 days of flexible dieting, 3 days in the plan. Next week it's going to be 5 and 2. So we're pulling her further away from a nutrition plan week by week, to a point where in about 3 weeks' time it's just going to be flexible dieting, and we'll see how she responds to that. She is getting leaner. She's getting really good at tracking accurately. Her abs are starting to show. She's going on holidays in August. They're already coming out now, so she's ahead of schedule. It's great to see. But, again, as she becomes more flexible with her diet, the communication from me to her is going to be very much about, this does not mean that you get to eat, absolute junk for 50% of your day, thinking that's not going to have a negative response in your body. I'll still oversee what she's logging. I add her as a friend on my fitness pal. I see what she's having, and again, if I see things are getting too slack, that's where my job is to jump in and say, hold on a second, where are your structures with your meals? Where's the veg gone? Where why aren't you hitting protein targets, etc., etc. And again, that's part of the accountability that's still there. But if someone thinks, oh well, look, if I just bank enough calories and I can go absolutely mad on a Saturday, yeah, listen, you're the whole wrong way about how this process works.
Well, that's it, and I think alongside the flexible dieting as well, like what I see, because I use a lot of different approaches. I am a fan, I'll be honest, of kind of meal plans from a goal perspective. If you're that dead set in your goal, that is the most efficient way to get there, but it has its cons. Yeah. It does mean that there is probably a small bit less flexibility, but if that's fine, and that's fine, because there are some people that just, especially men, I'm speaking from experience, lads do not care. Most lads have probably eaten the same thing for the last 5 years in a row, you know what I mean? But I think then as well, like the flexible side of it, the point is gone. I don't know what I was going to say. It was more so just people can use it as just a scapegoat as well. This is what I was going to say. I find that even with flexible approaches, people are still eating the same foods week to week. Mm-hmm. The successful ones, they're not changing things day to day for weeks on end. They still have their standard meals that they will generally work around. What I like to do with them as well is kind of educate them around, like, if you just anchor your protein, like your protein, there's only so much you can do with protein, truthfully. You're not going to really change it too much. You have your meats, you have your eggs. After that, then you've a diminishing return from a protein perspective. But look at carbs, look at how you dress your food, look at how you add to it. If you keep your base the same and just dress around it, it's so much easier. Where I found most of the issues with people that try to track every single day different things, every single time, they will not last much longer than a couple of weeks. Then you have a chat about how they're overwhelmed or frustrated, it's too much, you know what I mean, and not making progress. But again, it comes down to just what are you willing to do?
Yeah, I think with flexible dieting, like I agree with you there. If you're trying to change your meals from Monday to Tuesday, Wednesday, it becomes very, very challenging. So what I often get people to do is I get them to use like MyFitnessPal or something, and I'll say, create your menu for Monday and use that on Tuesday and Wednesday as well, and then change it for Thursday, Friday, and then at the weekend maybe you'll go back to menu 1 again or something like that. Where you're working off 2 different kind of menus really. Yes, you have that bit of flexibility. If you want to change out your rice for spuds or pasta, off you go. If you want to change out your chicken for mince, off you go. But don't be looking to change everything like, oh, I took out this meal and I decided I put in, protein pancakes with loads of syrup and Nutella and all this, and I took out my carbs to make room for that. But like, okay, grand, how's that going to reflect in your body? How is that going to reflect in your training? Did you actually weigh out all your Nutella and your syrup there, or did you just free pour it? Okay, so you eyeballed it, right? There's probably an extra 200 calories gone in there, pure sugar. Now where are you at? How did you feel after? Sluggish. Great. Well, wouldn't it have been better to maybe stick to a more structured meal? You don't have to do it all the time. You're allowed to have your Sunday treats, but again, think of your goal. Is that going to align with it, or is it going to pull you further away from it? A great quote I saw recently, I actually hate quotes, but one that I actually do like, and I use it every so often myself now since, is, your food you're either using it to thrive or barely survive.
Yeah, it's true.
You know,
It's true. I like that.
if you want to push yourself and you want to get results in terms of your body and your performance, food is fuel. If you want to just tip away, kick the can down the road, maybe like you're doing right now, then yeah, keep making bad choices with food, and unfortunately that's going to keep you stuck in the same position you are right now. It doesn't mean you have to be 100% perfect all of the time. It doesn't mean your food has to be extremely boring, but it does come with a little bit more responsibility if you've certain goals of getting really, really lean or whatever it might be with your goals.
Yeah, it's funny. That's one thing I say to my clients, and you might not disagree with me. Like, I tell them it's not up to me to make your food tasty. Figure out how to use spices, figure out how to use seasonings, figure out how to actually dress a meal. That's on you.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I have that chat with clients so often. It's like, well, why do I have to stick with eating this? It's like, you don't have to. You can change it. You can have a different tasting meal every single day of the week if you
Yeah.
actually put a bit of effort into it. I've had that conversation so many times, and I just firmly lean on the side of, if you wanted to make it tasty, then learn what spices and seasoning is.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's
never
your
been easier
fucking
though. And I don't want to complain either about it, but it's never been easier for people to. There's never been a time in our existence where there's more choices of zero
yeah,
calorie sauces. Like, there's genuine businesses that are just made to create 0 calorie sauces, and some of them genuinely do taste quite well. Even if it's like you're into spices, Frank's hot sauce there's been around for a good while. I mean, like, it's so handy. You can make your food quite palatable if you're creative about it. And
yeah,
it's never been easier to look for recipes with TikTok now, or even just asking ChatGPT. It's never been easier to make your food creative. And you know, if you feel like, oh my god, why do I always feel like I have to eat, chicken and rice? But you don't. But like, find a way to make it creative. If you choose to eat that. I had chicken and rice last night, but it was a chicken curry. A little bit of curry
yeah.
sauce in it. It was absolutely brilliant. Curry made it in water. Um, Such a tasty meal, and I'll have it again tonight. And it does. It's not that I'm looking at my meals and like, oh, I'm so bored. I made it creative. I cooked the chicken in with some fried onions and fried peppers, a little bit of soy sauce, salt and pepper, a bit of cayenne pepper, in with some curry sauce then, and then on top of the rice with veg. It's honest to God. Like, if I got it in a restaurant, I wouldn't complain. So it's not challenging if you're just a little bit more mindful of how you prep your meals.
100%. And I think a lot of issues I see now as well is like every meal has to be tasty and enjoyable. That causes more issues than not, from what I see. Like, not every meal you eat in your week has to be a Michelin star meal. Like, if you're going through your day in work and like you like your food, fair enough, all well and good. But 90% of people, at least from the people I've worked with, they don't care what most of their food tastes like throughout their week until they have maybe their dinner, maybe have a meal out at the weekend. So why not make it as easy as you can? Keep things basic, keep it stable. You can rotate different carb sources. You can add in whatever you want. But they're the clients that I see generally tend to do good from bad. It's just having that stability and predictability across everything. Because if you can predict what's going to come up and what's going to happen, you don't have any issues.
For sure.
And there was one that's gone for me again. Just one of those mornings. It'll come back to me. But there was one question I want to ask you, Owen. Where do you think most people and what most people are getting wrong now, from maybe it's like a personal standards perspective, even especially in particular with men? Like, 'cause I personally believe we all need goals to work towards. We need a purpose. We need drive. But where do you see the big kind of fall down, just maybe through the people you've worked with, what you've seen with clients, your own observations in general right now?
I always go back to learned behaviours. So everything we've done up until right now has taught us habits. And that can be habits in your decision making as well. So I could decide to, after we've recorded this podcast, I could decide to go straight back into work. Even though after recording a podcast, what would be probably best for me is to go down, have a drink of water, have a bit of food, have a coffee, and go back to work after. But
Yeah.
depending on my learned behaviours and what I've reflected on, I'll make a decision based off that, what's best for me, what's best for work, what's best for my clients, and then I go from there. And every other aspect of our lives are the exact same. So learned behaviours, if you're someone who consistently puts other people first and doesn't put yourself first, the only way that you're going to change that is by actively changing that habit and putting yourself first and saying no to people by saying yes to yourself more so, because by saying yes to yourself, it doesn't directly mean that you're saying no to others. And what it then allows is you to show up better for those people that depend on you, particularly if you have kids or if you've a sick loved one or something like that. You're a better version of yourself, and I think it's very important that people create the pattern and the habit of putting themselves first, because the more you don't do it, the more it just becomes the norm, and you'll become so burnt out from trying to look after other people. You become so frustrated at not giving yourself any time that when it becomes the norm, you're just living a life of frustration, and then you're always chasing relief. And if you're always chasing relief, trust me, it's not fun, and you'll never ever feel that satisfaction. Life is for living, life is for enjoyment. You want to look back on every day and say, I'm glad I did that today, I'm glad I did this. Not, I look back and say, I didn't give myself 1 minute today because I was looking after everybody else and I didn't want to let anyone else down. And that's a learned behaviour, that's a habit, and that's a structure. So that can be as simple as, saying you're going to stick to your nutrition 100% today, but then someone brings cakes into the office, and because you don't want to upset them because they went to the trouble of bringing the cakes in, you sabotage your own nutrition just in case that they feel a bit put off, despite the fact that you're just trying to look after your own health. You might say, I'm going to train out tonight at 6 p.m, and then at 5 o'clock you get a text off a friend saying, do you want to meet for a cup of tea? And you were really looking forward to that workout, but because you kept putting them first, putting yourself last, you skip out on the workout. And what happens that evening? You get home, you say, I never got my workout done. I know I'm busy tomorrow, so I can't train tomorrow either. And you can become more and more frustrated, and that's a loop that people get stuck in. And that's just 2 examples. There's so much more that we can reflect on depending on the individual. That is where I see most people getting stuck. They don't keep their word to themselves. They don't follow look, every day is different, and sometimes you won't be able to stick to the ideal plan of each day in your head. Someone gets sick, someone calls into work, your day changes, and yeah, that can be a bit frustrating, but it doesn't mean that you have to down tools on yourself every time. The more you start saying, no, you know what, I can't meet for that cup of tea today, can we meet another day during the week, or you know what, those cakes look lovely, but I'm going to skip out on them today, I'm just trying to get my nutrition on track. No one's going to give out to you for doing that, and the satisfaction you'll feel after from saying, I put myself first, I did it, I proved myself I can do it once, so I can do it again and again. Watch how your energy changes. Watch how the results change long term from doing that. Because that's what I see the most of. People will always put an excuse in the way. I tried to stick to my nutrition this week, Owen, but, Sally brought cakes into the office, so I had to have one. Sally bringing cakes into the office, I'm pretty sure Sally didn't grab you by the throat and ram them down your mouth, right? That didn't happen. So don't blame the cakes. Don't blame Sally. Look at your own decision making. And why didn't you say, do you know what, I'll skip out on them this time? And what's the knock-on effect of that? Well, it's your own frustration because you didn't have the week you'd hoped for. And there's times when you can say yes to these things, of course, but the frequency at which you say yes is costing you. And what you're actually saying is you're actually saying no to yourself. You're not saying yes to someone else. You're saying no to yourself. So you've got to flip that, and the results of that long term will lead to a far more satisfactory life and a much calmer, less reactive version of yourself.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I see it time and time again. And you have to nearly be selfish now. You really do, because people do not care what you're doing. Most people don't care about your goals. Most people don't care about the effort you have to take to work towards them, or the investment you're making in yourself. So, and that's just being honest. Most people, they'll say, "Oh, well done." What you do is at the beginning, people will tell you how great you are for making this effort, and at the end, when you look fantastic, people will be like, "Jesus, how have you done that?" It's that middle period. No one cares, and they don't care. But they don't care whether you do it or you don't. So it's as easy for you to just bow out and say, "Oh, look, I'm actually fine." Just like you said as well, it's that ownership. It's someone I'm quite big on myself, and I think we were talking beforehand. But also with clients, is taking extreme ownership of these things. I'll use the example you used of the colleague bringing cake in. The colleague isn't at fault there. You're at fault for taking some. Mm-hmm. So why make an excuse and try to blame that person when you could just be honest, take extreme ownership of and say, yeah, that was me, that was my bad, and then just move forward. I think that's the thing. You're also pulling away from conformity and comfort, though. That's the other side of it, which I think is massive. As a society, it's never been easier to just go with the flow in any aspect, in every aspect, I guess. It's never been easier to go with the flow, and it's never probably been harder to break away from it. Like there was a guy I was talking to, a new client, just talking to him last night, and he was saying like he would have kind of fallen into the trap of, like you mentioned, he'd be looking forward to the weekend and there'd be beers and there'd be drink, and he'd be losing half a week then to get himself back around. He had one weekend, I think it was last weekend, didn't drink at all, and he felt great. And he was like, right, Jesus, this is actually what it could feel like most of the time. You know what I mean? But again, it just comes down to prioritizing yourself. Something that I use with clients is what I call kind of trigger mapping. So, like, I'll use the example of like going off plan nutrition wise, like having that bit of cake. Like, I don't necessarily throw so much focus to the incident, but rather what's the sequence that's led to it. So maybe it was someone who didn't have breakfast. Maybe it was someone who didn't get a good night's sleep. Maybe someone didn't bring their food with them. Maybe they made allowances somewhere else. So if you can actually catch things earlier, that incident doesn't happen. It's a lot easier to actually work around compared to, as people just find it easy to say, oh, well, I just went off plan. Okay, but why? It wasn't just a willpower thing. The likelihood is there's nearly always a sequence of a lead up that a couple of things have happened that has prompted this. And if you can catch it early, then the chances of success are so much higher because you're not fighting that willpower battle at that instance. Same with the gym. There was a client who he just kept kind of missing it because it was in the evening after work. And I was like, right, well, why don't we just go before work? And I'll be too tired. And I was like, well, like you're tired at the minute either ways, and you're also not getting it done. So, for speaking honestly, what have you got to lose? So he said, all I want is you just try it. If you try it just for a week, if you absolutely hate it, that's fine. And you know what? He fucking loves it. He hasn't missed a session in weeks. Feels great. Energy for the day. You know what I mean?
It's mad, isn't it? Like, I've had the same conversation with clients over the years. Like, maybe morning training could be something you could try because, the longer the day goes on, the less likely you seem to be to get to the gym. And there's been times where you've gotten to the evenings, you've had time, you still haven't gone because you're tired. So
Yeah.
why not tick the box that you're finding hardest to tick first thing in the morning? So then the rest of your day actually nearly gets easier, and you don't have that onus on you to try and get to the gym in the evening. Particularly if you're after a long day at work, you've got other responsibilities in the evening. Get it done in the morning. Very few people who start that habit and get it under their belt and stick with it for a few weeks ever stop. Then if you can get it done early in the day. I don't personally like it myself. I like to train maybe late morning, kind of midday to early afternoon is what suits me, and I like to have a bit of food in me before I lift, and that's me, right? But again, that doesn't mean I'll always be that way, and I think down the line, maybe when I have kids and stuff, I think it'll be a case that I look at, I'll get that done early in the day, and that'll be me done. Because the longer the day goes on, the less likelihood you are to get it done because other things can crop up. So I think it's a great option for people. I think early morning training, if you can do that, it sets you up nicely for the day too. If you get that big box ticked early in the morning, like it sets you up with such a feeling of accomplishment, satisfaction, and just overall kind of a sense of achievement. If you can go into the rest of the day saying, wow, got my session today, it felt great. No, you're more likely to kind of stick to your nutrition because you worked hard enough to get yourself out of bed, to put in the effort of a hard session in the morning. A lot of people will be more likely to stick to their nutrition throughout the day as well, so that they're not sabotaging the hard effort that they've made early in the day to actually work out.
Yeah, I've seen that. I think anyone that I have that trains morning, look, I'm not a fan of morning training for absolutely everyone. I think the people that end up like training more frequently in the week, I'm talking maybe like 4 sessions a week, and they train with intensity. Morning training probably isn't the best in that scenario. But again, it also comes down to needs most. If you can train elsewhere, it's just get it done is all that matters. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think people get so lost in the weeds of having things perfect and having to have it align with everything in place that they've lost sight of the fact that if you just go and work hard enough and do for the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to be in a much better position anyway.
Yeah, I always remember it when I was running the gym there years ago. I used to open at 5:30, particularly around the times of just after the lockdowns ended. We'd have to scan everybody in at the door manually, and we'd open at 5:30. We'd leave about 20 or 30 of them in, and me and one of the lads, we left them all in one day, and he just looked at me and said, not one of them is going to lift heavy. It's 5:30 in the morning. They're in to get the workout, and that's fine too, But like, he's like, have you ever seen anybody do a squat or deadlift PB for 1, 2, 3 RM at this time of the morning? And I was like, no, I actually haven't. He's like, they're just in to move, and that's fine. But like you said, people who are training with a bit more intensity, they're going to be training later in the day, aren't they?
Yeah, usually. I think you also need to have such like you're diving into the details, but if you're training first thing in the morning, you need to either be carb loading the night before,
Yeah.
or you need to make sure. Like I always, I don't know, I don't all fucking do it, but I advise having the likes of and EAAs or a protein shake. I generally prefer EAAs, salt, water, some and intra carbs. Intra carbs is a game changer, especially for women. I have like plenty of women like would have kind of maybe had amenorrhea, maybe lost their period, and it's like, well, realistically, a lot of the time this is generally due to more overall stress load. And would you believe the correlation? A lot of them would train first thing in the morning with nothing in them. And I was like, right, well, that needs to go straight away,
Yeah.
initially anyway.
Yeah, probably getting themselves out of bed earlier than they need to be getting up, and then training on an empty stomach, probably not having a carb then the night before. Yeah, like dextrose and intra carbs can be very intra workout carbs can be very helpful, particularly for people who aren't looking to get leaner at the moment. Maybe people who are looking to build a bit of muscle. They're absolutely a game changer for sure.
But even alongside that, like I use them myself. I don't use them with all clients. Like most people don't need it. Like just eat within an hour or two before, and you're probably going to be fine. Because most people probably aren't training hard enough. But it's a game changer because I know myself. If I don't have it, I will crash. I have very efficient systems which I've tested comprehensively with bloods over the years. But it's just simple things. Simple things is all it really needs. And that's all it takes, you know what I mean? And like I'm sure you've seen plenty of people that they're going in, they're putting the effort in, but not getting results, not getting progress. I think that's criminal. If you're actually getting up or going in the evening, you're putting the hour or two aside to go get the work done, but you're not getting progress. Like what's the point? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's frustrating, but again, there's always a reason for it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, no, it's you could go on deep dives across all this stuff in fairness.
Yeah,
And
again, you're going to get that though. You're going to get people who like if you go into a gym tonight, you will see, if you stood inside the gym for 2 hours tonight, you would see, depending on the size of the gym, you see hundreds of people trying,
yeah,
actually trying to do better. But there's, not all of them, a large percentage of them probably aren't going to be in the shape that they want to be in. And there's a very good reason for that. And again, maybe sometimes some of them are aware of it and they're just not taking the action that they need to take. And then some are just unaware as to what they even need to change. But it's never from a lack of effort. Well, very often it's not from a lack of effort. But most people will think, well, if I just train more, I'll get the
yeah,
results I want. And that's never the answer. Never ever the answer. Like, look, if you're in a fat loss phase, are you going to start training more than what you're doing right now, Lee? No, you're going to structure your nutrition differently. You're going to structure your habits differently. You might even reduce your training slightly. You might just curb it.
typically, yeah, for
It's
sure.
never to train more. Never.
And I think a lot of people, like especially, it was a lot of the reason I pulled away from PT in person training was because I found people just used it as an excuse to not look at any other aspect because they're going to the gym 2 or 3 times a week. So, well, I'm going here, so I'm going to get results. It doesn't matter if I'm not sleeping. It doesn't matter if my food's all over the place. It doesn't matter if I'm drinking every weekend. There's only so many times you can have that conversation with people before you're like, right, what is the fucking point? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
It was also someone you mentioned, it just a thought came back to me. You just, as that, you were mentioning about switching off, right? And taking that time for yourself and not getting consumed by what you're doing. I'm sure you have worked with, it's more in person for me than online, kind of clients in their 50s, 60s onwards. Maybe they were business owners, maybe they were entrepreneurs themselves. How often did you come across one who said they would all do it again and they were quite happy? Because there was always a question I asked them was like, would you change it? Is it all worth it now looking back? Not one of them have been able to say that because now what they're doing is now they're trying to fix their health. Now they're trying to get their time back. Yeah, it's crazy. When you're looking at people who have been there, done it, they wouldn't do it again. So if you're not going to, people aren't going to learn from that, then what are you going to learn from?
In terms of they just didn't learn from like they wouldn't go back and put all their eggs in one basket with just say focusing on their business. You mean?
Yeah, so like obviously you know yourself, that generation, probably generation or two before us, it was all work, work, work. the expense and cost of everything else, especially from like the business owner side of things, it consumed them. There was no free time, there was no holidays, there was barely any time being there for the kids growing up. And now all of a sudden they're hit retirement and they have their time, they have their money. But like that, not one of them have said that it was worth it. They would all say they'd go back and do it differently.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be all work, no play, you know, and I think it goes back to what we spoke about earlier in the episode. Like, a few of my friends now are starting to have kids, and it's so funny seeing their grandparents that I would have always thought were like kind of quiet, reserved people. So, like, my friends' parents, but the grandparents of the kid, who are like, everything is about the child. And you can see like that they're very present now. They're putting all their effort and all their time and all their focus into their grandchild. Maybe because themselves realise that they put too much effort into the wrong areas when their own kids were small. They were probably too focused on work, trying to do things the wrong way. Maybe they were trying to support their family as well. Look, Jesus, not to be harping on, but I think when you look back, I think that's what we try to do for people, and maybe for ourselves too, is to live in the moment and try and have an equal effort into our personal lives, but also an equal effort into our business lives and our health and fitness and all these different segments that make up our life, where we're not just saying, okay, if I go fully into work and coaching, give everything towards that, well then that's no good, because then you've no life, you've no relationships suffer, your partnerships suffer, you suffer yourself. So it can't be everything about work. So I think obviously nobody can go back in time. So if anyone's listening to this right now and you feel like all your eggs in one basket, you have to try and separate things evenly, and do take a bit of downtime. Do take a bit of time away from just thinking like, okay, well, if I commit to this coach or this program or this PT, that I'll just give it everything. You have to give yourself a bit of time with your partner or your friends and your family and yourself as well, because you will burn out and you'll actually build up a poor relationship with exercise and nutrition, because what actually happens then is you look at it as, well, this has taken everything away from the quality of my life outside of health and fitness, when it hasn't. You just opted to leave it like that. So it's very important that you do make time for all the other things in your life as well, because that's where the satisfaction comes from. If you only gave time to yourself, then your relationships would suffer, your partnerships would suffer, your kids would suffer, and your health would suffer. It's the exact same. If you give all your eggs in one basket to your health and nutrition, all your relationships suffer. If you give all your eggs in one basket to work, everything else suffers. You have to have a kind of an even divide amongst everything in your life, and that will bring that sense of calm. And when you're in a calm state, you're more likely to be successful in all areas, so you can think clearly and plan clearly, rather than just trying to be reactive and trying to put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And as well as that then as well, I think getting clear on what balance looks like for you, because it's not, I don't personally think balance is 50-50. I've seen that causes more issue than not, thinking it has to be one thing or it has to be an equal split with different aspects. But it's understanding what it does actually look like for you. Maybe someone does just want to train more, so that's going to be weighted more in terms of like the split. But again, you're still mixing in everything else alongside. Like for me, for example, I'll just use myself as an easy one. Like at the minute, like balance for me has always been, it's not even balance because it's fairly skewed, but it's always been kind of more weighted more in terms of, for this, and second point, understanding seasons of life, right? Sometimes there are times where you just have to, like you've done, run the gym. When you're managing trying to build you online, there wasn't much in the way of enjoyment. Could it have been done differently? Absolutely. But it's ultimately got you to be able to bring that balance back. You know what I mean? So I think if you can understand those two things, that first of all, the seasons of life, is it a season that actually requires that level of commitment for whatever it is? Or is it something that, I actually can probably make the same progress while still incorporating aspects of the other? And then number two is, what does balance actually look like? What does your split look like? I have often found it's actually, I've worked with a lot of clients that have struggled because they're trying to give equal attention to everything. Whereas I'm like, well, look, why don't we just look at it a bit differently? Well, what needs your focus and priority now? And maybe it's this, right? And now what do you, from a desire point of view, would you like to be able to put more to? Then it's this. Okay, well, maybe we split these things a small bit more, weighted more here, and then all of a sudden the mental easement there is just so much higher, because they're not trying to follow that they can only work so much, and that they have to give their family, and they have to have their hobbies, and they have to have everything else. It's just if you can understand what your personal split is, it's a game changer. And also understand that just because that's how it is now doesn't mean that that's what it's like in 6 months' time or 12 months' time.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. You know, life changes, and you have to kind of be ready to adjust and adapt as well along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's kind of how I operate myself is now I'm in a season now where I'm still obviously making time for friends and family and a bit of the fun side of things, but it's predominantly work because that's just what we're working towards, what we're aiming towards. But I know in say 6 months' time or even 12 months' time, there's a lot of big plans kicking off that the focus then is going to be right. Well, let's just pull back and enjoy absolutely everything that's happening then too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, like look, different seasons of your life, but also
Yeah,
different seasons of the year. You're going to have different, like the run to the summer. A lot of people are going to be getting leaner, so you put more energy into that. When the summer is approaching, from September onwards, I'll probably go into a gaining phase. So calories will increase. There'll be that little bit more flexibility with nutrition. I'm not going to be as, diligent in terms of, every calorie or whatever that time of year. But where I'll be more diligent this time of year when I've got holidays coming up. This time of year it's where we should be getting more sunshine. So you'll have more skin on show or whatever, and that's something that I suit. So again, my energy goes a little bit more towards being more mindful with nutrition, whereas when I get that gaining phase, I am a little bit more flexible with myself without losing the rag completely. And that's just a different season of the year. And again, a lot of clients will probably resonate with that, where you have that gaining phase, you have that building phase, you have a little bit more wiggle room with calories. It's a nice place to be. But when it's time to dial in, when you're in a tidy up phase or whatever it might be, make sure you dial in.
yeah, it has to be. It absolutely has to be because otherwise you just spin your wheels and get absolutely nowhere.
Correct, yeah.
That's the fucking issue. One last question for you, Owen. We always like to finish with this one. But if today was your last day on earth and you could be remembered for one thing or there was one message you wanted to leave behind, what would it be?
Oh, that's a really good one. I'm going to think about this for a sec, get myself a good answer. What I would do is I would do something that scares me because I'd have nothing to lose. So I would just sit for a minute and I would think of something that really, really scares me, that has always been in the back of my mind that I'd like to do. I would spend time with the ones that I love the most. So I'd bring everyone together and just have a big party. And I would then just look at valuing that time, because realistically we're all on borrowed time. Every day that passes we're all getting a day closer to death, which I know sounds very morbid, but it's not. It's just to show how valuable each day is.
Yeah.
So, I recently had a guy on my own podcast a few weeks back who has brain cancer, and he was diagnosed a year ago, and he was given 12 to 14 months to live. So, he realistically he could be gone in the next couple of months, and his positivity was unbelievable, and all he kept saying was how lucky he was. He was so lucky to have great friends, lucky to have his daughter, and he just lived every single day as if it was his last. And he just does all the fun things. He still exercises, still meets all his friends, and he just surrounded himself with the right people. So I think if today was my last day, I would surround myself with the best people I have in my life, all the ones I care about, friends, family, and just appreciate every second, every conversation, and then try and live your life like that. Try and live your life with appreciate the little things. If it's a case of I'm getting out for a walk and it's dry, that's something to appreciate.
Yeah.
Getting out and having a coffee, appreciate someone there who's smiles at you in the street. The little things, and I know I might sound cheesy and corny, but it goes a long way to putting you in a positive state. So if you lived every day with that kind of a mindset, surrounding yourself with good people and doing the things that you want to do, then you're going to be a lot happier.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's a fucking great way. That's a great way to do it. And there was one thing you touched on there is finding the small positive things as often as you can, because there's so much that happens in your day, and if you can always see it like that, it's a game changer for your mental health.
Yeah, you have to be grateful for the little things,
Yeah.
And again, it's easier said than done. You have to practice it. Like I go back to an example this morning. Dog woke me for his breakfast earlier than my alarm, right? there's times where I was stressed in the past where I would have been like, oh, go away, go back into bed. Whereas this morning I was like, okay, it's only like 15 minutes before my alarm. I'm awake now. Let's go get him his breakfast. Let's give him a rub and chat with him there for a few minutes when he's waking up. And it was a lovely experience. And I got him downstairs, made him his breakfast. He went out the back garden, and I was like, dry, it's a nice day. And next thing, the positivity just flowed through me. You know, I was just like, I'm going to do my check-ins there now, and I was positive with the clients. You know, and everything just felt easier. Whereas I could have woken up this morning, I could have given out to the dog, starting a negative, go down, just throw his breakfast at him and go away. You know, what kind of a tone did that set for the day? So taking a little bit of positive in all the small things, you know, I could go very, very, you know, different here, you know. God forbid, comes a time where the dog is no longer there, you know. How would I feel then? I would miss him. I would give anything for him to wake me 15 minutes early. But people don't think like that. People think, oh my God, he's causing a stress on my day. No, he's not. He was just looking for his breakfast. You know, there'll be a time where he's no longer with us, and I'll be thinking, I wish I could just give him his breakfast. I wish he could wake me. So, you know, I think it's very important that we live in the moment and think of, you know, the things that are stressing us out or things that we're giving out about. Should we be a bit more grateful for them? And how would our lives look? And how would we think? And how would we act if we took a change of perspective, you know?
Yeah, and I think one thing you said there as well with that client, or that, the guy in your podcast, and even with the dog there, we never take these things in consideration until it's too late, until the end is literally there. And it's always the way.
Yeah. We if we could live in the moment more so.
Yeah.
I think it's so important to do that. It's very hard to do that. But just live in the moment and take things in. You'll appreciate the memories a lot more than afterwards, you know?
I think the more, because you're similar to myself, like the more driven and ambitious you are, the harder that is, because you know what you're working towards, you know what's ahead, you believe you can achieve it, so you just want to do it and get there, you know what I mean? But that's one thing I've worked on myself over the past kind of 6 months, especially because it's always been that, like, anytime I hit a goal or made an accomplishment, right, well, I'm no happier now than I was, so what's the next thing? There's no way to live, you know what I mean?
And I can relate to it totally, but what I try and do, and it helps me, is like look forward to things that aren't too far away, that are really small things, that when it gets to them, then you'll be like, okay, I'm prepped to live in the moment now that it's here. So for example, like the World Cup is obviously starting really soon. You know, certain games I'm going to watch with my dad, right? I'm not going to be looking to the games and like, I can't wait for this game, and then when it gets to it, think of another game. I'm going to sit there and watch the game and be present. I'll turn the phone off and all that. So those little things, you know, small little things to look forward to will be good.
It's massive, and I think having things like that to look forward to as well. Like we're heading off to France for a couple of days with the family, so like there'll be minimal, if any, work done for those couple of days. Good. Because I know realistically for the rest of the year there's not going to be much in the way of time off for anything else. So, but again, that's okay because you can take your little wins as you get them. And I think that's massive because otherwise you retire and it's like, right, well, fuck all this, none of it was worth it. That's what happens.
Yeah, that's the last thing you want, is to get to that point and say, well, I enjoyed none of it along the way, but at least now I can rest. But what was the point in all of it? So you have to take your rest, your days in France, your few days off. You have to take them as well and look forward to them. But when you're there, then don't look forward to anything else. Just live in that moment and be there.
Absolutely. Eoin, if anyone is listening here and they want to learn a small bit more about you, maybe they like your message, how you operate, where can they find you?
So Eoin Cremin Fitness is on social media. You'll find me on Instagram primarily. I'm on Facebook as well, but you'll find me on Instagram. There's the logo behind me. I work as an online coach. If you have any questions, my DMs are always open. If you're interested in something like coaching, again, you can click the link in my bio. You'll find my coaching applications there. And Eoin Cremin Fitness on Instagram is the easiest way to find me.
Brilliant. Well, Eoin, very much appreciate your time. And as always, it was a great chat. And for anyone listening, we will catch you guys next week.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks for having me.